Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Another game in the Champions Classic, Michigan State and Duke. First of all, Duke, what was up with Cameron Indoor with no fans in the stands, right? Like, let me just say this. Every time we start a new sport, I'm always like, I don't know if this is going to work, no fans in the stands, and we always figure it out. I remember being in the Fox Sports Radio studios the first day that we had, Major League Baseball with no fans in the stands. I was like, this is weird. I'll never get used to it. And then you do. NFL, never get used to it. And then you do. College football, never get used to it. Then you do. NBA bubble. We get used to all of them. I've even gotten used to college basketball. I got Bill Walton yelling and screaming about Asheville, the most pet-friendly city in the world or whatever. But Cameron was weird, man. Cameron had this weird echo. You got the Duke players yelling and clapping and cheering on the sidelines and pounding the – it was just bizarre. So that's one. That was like my biggest takeaway. It was like, Cameron's weird. Like, I'm used to the NFL. I'm used to the NBA. I'm used to other college basketball arenas. That was weird. As for the game itself, it was frankly not all that different from Kentucky-Kansas. Well, actually it was, because Michigan State just kicked the crap out of Duke. The final score was 75-69. But if you watch the game, it frankly wasn't anywhere as close to that. Michigan State was up by as much as 15 in the second half. Duke made a little run here or there, but it was never really that close after about the first probably 15 minutes or so. Michigan State closed the first half really strong, dominated the second half, get a great win. And so kind of like with Kentucky and Kansas, it feels the same to me in this sense. Michigan State won. You should probably start with the winner. But to me, the more interesting story is Duke. And I do stories and I do topics on this show. And so let's start with Duke, because to me, Duke is just a very fascinating team, kind of from the same perspective as Kentucky, frankly, Kansas as well. I just don't think they're very good right now. And it's really funny. I don't even know if I think Michigan State is very good right now, which we'll get into in a minute. But, it's interesting because I have a buddy that's kind of involved with Michigan State basketball. And I don't want to say he's involved, but he kind of is sort of on the periphery, and he knows some of the guys on the team. And I was texting with him throughout the day, and he's just like, man, we stink, dude. We're going to get run out of Cameron Indoor. And I was like, dude, have you seen Duke? Like, I'm not saying Duke, like you guys are great, but Duke is like really young, really inexperienced. And if you watch the game, or if you saw highlights of the game on Saturday against Coppin State, 22 turnovers. You beat Coppin State, one of the worst teams in college basketball, by 10. All of a sudden you're sitting there saying like, wait a second, I don't know if Duke's that good. And so I told him, I said, dude, I'm telling you, man, I know Michigan State has struggled with Duke traditionally. I know Tom Izzo has not had success against Coach K. I'm just telling you, I don't think Duke's good. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And Duke's biggest problem is, ironically, I think similar to Kentucky's biggest problem, is that they got a bunch of dudes right now, and I don't know if anybody really knows who fits in where and what it means and all that kind of stuff. I think the biggest problem with Duke, I've said it all fall. If you read any of my articles, I've said it in my articles. They got a freshman point guard. And this isn't a freshman point guard like Jalen Suggs at Gonzaga. This isn't a freshman point guard like John Wall when he was at Kentucky, or whomever. I'm trying to think of other great freshman point guards in college basketball. He's a kid named Jeremy Roach. I think he's going to be good, but he was a fringe 5-star guy. And you look at him, you look at the fact that the other point guard is a fourth-year senior who, has been a role player his whole career, and I think that's where the problems start. I think it's where the problems start is what I said a minute ago, is that Duke just frankly has a bunch of guys, and I don't know how they all fit together. And I do think you could say that kind of every year, but I think in years past, the star power was so great that it didn't matter. And so what do I mean by that? Well, 2 years ago, you had Zion and RJ. And Zion and RJ has fixed everything, right? Like fixed everything on defense, fixed everything on offense, created second chance points, whatever. But then last year, you also had Trey Jones, who was, an NBA draft pick, just a veteran, savvy point guard. I know he was only a sophomore, but he was a veteran. He was the ACC Player of the Year. Everything ran through him. He was confident. He was comfortable. He knew what he was doing. And I think he masked a lot of the problems that Duke had. Well, this year you got a freshman point guard, and then you kind of look around the rest of the roster, and you're like, I don't really know about the rest of these guys. You have, at the very least, freshmen in new roles, no different than Kentucky. But then you also, even your returning players, you're asking them to do things that they haven't done before. Matt Hurt is back. Basically was a role player, fourth leading scorer last year, whatever. Now you expect him to average like 18 a game. I don't know if he's that guy. Wendell Moore, sophomore, averaged 7 points a game last year, injury plagued. Now you're asking him to be a star. I don't know if he's that guy. Jaylen Johnson, freshman, really good. But is he ready to step into that role as star of the team from day one? He isn't Zion. He isn't Cam Reddish. He isn't RJ. And so if he's not those guys, is he ready for that moment? They got another freshman named DJ Stewart, who I think is going to be good, but he's kind of a 2, 3, not even a 2. He's probably a 3 or 4 year college player. Is he ready? And so when I look at Duke, I think the reality remains they got a bunch of dudes that, like, I don't think even the coaching staff really knows how to put all these guys together, how they all fit together. And the bigger question becomes, can the guys that you need to be stars, can they really be stars in the ACC? Can Matt Hurt really be a first-team All-ACC guy? Can Wendell Moore really be a first-team All-ACC guy? And then furthermore, beyond that, can you get consistent play out of your point guard? It's Kentucky's problem right now. To a degree, it's Kansas's problem right now. They don't have a traditional point guard. And it's Duke's problem right now. If you watched them, there was just no symmetry, no rhythm, no nothing. And so as we get into Michigan State in a minute, what I would just say is, again, I'm not positive if Duke is that, if Michigan State was that good or if Duke was just that bad. I really do think it was kind of the latter. You look at this game, and it wasn't all that different from the Kentucky game. 5 of 23 from 3 from Duke, 12 turnovers, 8 assists. Like, when you have a minus assist-to-turnover ratio, you're really going to struggle. And so with Duke, I just think it'll be really interesting because I think you're asking a lot of guys that have never been put in these kind of roles to now be in these kinds of roles. And I just don't know what to expect from them. The good thing is that I do think that they have a pretty manageable schedule going on. They don't actually leave Durham. They don't actually leave Durham until the start of ACC play. They do have one big game at home, Illinois, in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Illinois' got a bunch of grown men on that team, though, and they got guys that know their roles and know what they're doing, and I'm just not sold that Duke is there yet. And when I look at Duke in the bigger picture of the ACC, I kind of see a team that I don't think they're better than Virginia, even though Virginia just lost. I don't think they're better than Florida State. I don't think they're better than Louisville, who I was quietly impressed by on Tuesday against Western Kentucky. We'll get to them in a minute. I think Duke's the 4th, 5th best team, and I think they're fine. I think they got, a couple guys that'll get a cup of coffee in the NBA, and Jaylen Johnson's pretty good. I don't think this is a very good Duke team, though. We will see. By the way, I didn't even mention North Carolina, who I think is probably better than them as well. But I've been proven wrong on Duke before, but I don't see this group of players coming together and doing what they need to do to be a real threat.